Hey humans, how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 433, and my guest is Lyn Yip. Lyn and I met through my friend Jake. She and I met in real time last summer, and I immediately loved her. She's really cool, very smart, very fun. She's Malaysian Chinese and has lived all over the world. She currently resides in Paris. She's a polyglot, and she works in the sustainability side of marketing with makers and artists. Really fascinating woman. I love her to death. Really happy that she said yes when I asked her to be on the show. In other news, check out heyhumanpodcast.com for links and to learn more about my guests and the show. Hey Human Podcast is on YouTube under official Susan Ruth. I'm on Patreon at Susan Ruthism. My TikTok and Instagram is also Susan Ruthism. Check out SusanRuth.com to learn more about me and my other artistic endeavors, and find my albums on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your music. Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human Podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you for listening. Be well, be kind, be love. Here we go. Lyn Yip, welcome to Hey Human.
Thank you, Susan.
It's lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too.
I'm glad we had this chance because I know you're only visiting for a short while. And I met you through my dear friend Jake, and you are his honey bunny love. And I adore Jake. Of course, I adore you. And I've gotten to know you a little bit while you've been here. Not obviously, we haven't had a whole lot of time together, but a little bit. And I thought, you know what? As long as you're in town, might as well get you on the show.
I love that.
Yeah,
it's an honor to be here. I love the show. I love the idea of it. I love the philosophy of it, and I feel like if we lived the way the show is, it would it just makes life more beautiful.
Thank you. That's a big compliment. I appreciate that. Well, let's jump in. Tell me where you grew up. What shaped you as a person?
I grew up in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. And what shaped me as a person? Well, that's a big question. It was interesting because Malaysia is a country we have a lot of different cultures that we grew up with, and everybody has their place, an allocated place in the country, and it's not always comfortable, but it is somewhat peaceful at the same time.
What do you mean by allocated place?
So Malaysia is made of three different ethnicities and three different main cultures. I mean, there's more than three, but the main cultures are the Malays, who are what they consider in the country the people of the land, and then the Chinese who are considered immigrants, and because we are, and the Indians from South India mostly, and who are also considered immigrants. So it's a really at the same time a great mix of cultures that are very well integrated into one another. Also, we feel our difference a lot because like in the social political sense, and somehow everyone just accepts their position. Like the Malays have privilege. This is a widely known thing, and because we are considered to be outsiders. But then we have known this for a long time, and we've kind of like lived with it. They have, it upsets people to a certain point of feeling like you're not being a part of where you're from. But at the same time, you find you find your home in your own way. It means something to you in your own way. You interact with it in your own way. You make your own relationship with it. There's a big filmmaker, one of the biggest filmmakers in Malaysia. I can't remember her name now, but there are not many actually. It's been like many, many years, and she said she was brilliant, and she made a lot of movies about the culture, about this topic, and she's fantastic. And she was a trans woman, and that was very, very a big deal in Malaysia. And she said being anything other than Malay in Malaysia is like being in love with someone who's not in love with you.
Oh, wow. That's powerful.
Yeah, it is. And we live that way. And
is it a caste system sort of Or is it hierarchical? Like you can't get a certain job, or is it more the vibe?
The vibe is actually pretty good. Like people individually with neighbors, with community, the vibe is great. It's but in terms of policies and like certain laws, like you can't start a business if you don't start one with a Malay person. Or when they build a building, like the choice, like for an apartment building, for instance, like the choice places are, for first of all for the Malays. And I feel like I haven't lived in Malaysia for many years, for almost 20 years. And so, I'm sure there's a lot of things that are changing, which is great, and but what the beauty of Malaysia is that we learn to live peacefully with all of that, because on a neighborly level, on a relational level, on a friendship level, we know that this is not a personal thing, and we want to keep that peace. We want to see each other, as a person and individually. I think a lot of people do. I grew up in a home with the Malays on the one side and the Indian neighbors on the other, and we shared everything. Like our cultures, we celebrated all of each other's holidays. We never returned a Tupperware empty. We, things like that. And so that was how I grew up. And I grew up with a wonderful house, like a woman who took care of us, like, our home and children. And I grew up with her, and she was my first friend. And I, and that was wonderful. And I learned to cook with her. I learned to play with her. And that's a big part of our culture.
So
Growing
wait,
up
is
with
she
somebody
Malay?
out. She's Chinese.
Chinese, okay.
Yeah, yeah. And
Was
she had 10 children, and she was our housekeeper and our nanny, and she lived with us. And she had 10 children. I didn't know that growing up. And she spent 5 days or 6 days a week with us. And well, she had 10 children to feed, and she didn't bring them up because she was bringing me up. And that was the life that she had. And that's an extraordinary life, isn't it?
did you meet her children?
Yeah. I met her daughter a couple of years ago. About 8 years ago, I met her daughter because I lost contact with her for many years. And I told my father one day, I said, you have to find her because she's getting older, and I want to see her before it's too late. And because she had a falling out with my mother when I was like 13 or something. And so I was not allowed to see her for many years. And I said, I have to find her. And so he found her, and I met her daughter for the first time. And that's how I knew she had 10 children. Her daughter had bought a house. So she grew up, and she had a good life, and she bought her a house next to herself. So she lived next to her daughter with a three-legged dog. And it was lovely. And I went to see them, and her daughter said to me, oh, like she was so kind and so wonderful. And throughout the course of the conversation, I realized that she had 10 children, and her daughter had grown up without her mother because her mother had brought me up. And she was so generous and so kind. There was not a single ounce of resentment or anything like that, And she treated me as if I was family. She was like, oh, of course. Like, I can't wrap my head around that.
So was your family a family of means then? So that was sort of the way that worked?
No, it's a very middle class thing in Malaysia to have that, actually. We were comfortable, I guess, maybe upper middle class. You never really understand wealth or the lack of it when you're a child. I guess now when I think about it, I think about the stuff that my mom had as a woman, and I was like, well, I can't afford that. I was like, maybe we were doing all right,
Did the Malaysian culture, does it allow for marriage between Malaysians and Chinese, or Malaysians and Indians, or is that a no-no?
Yeah, Malays can marry anybody as long as Malays do not have freedom of religion, of faith. So they have to be Muslim. Malaysia is a Muslim country, but only for the Malays. So they don't have a choice but to be Muslim. And so if you were to marry into a traditional Malay family, you have to convert. And if you don't convert, I don't think they actually give you the marriage license. I don't think you're allowed to. Some people, they fall in love and they leave the country, and they can be, or some people just convert because, like they say, if you don't believe, then, like baptism is just some water on your head,
Sure.
and so it doesn't really matter. And a lot of people do that. They just do it so that they can be accepted by society, accepted by the families, and to be together.
When rules exist like this in a country, do you find that the young people are bucking against it, or do you think in that part of the world they just go along to get along?
I think a lot of people go along to get along, and they not just that. I think some people really integrate it. They really embrace it, and they find purpose and meaning in it in order to survive. They don't live it as a lack of freedom. They live it as duty and honor and values as well, And there are some who just can't stand it, and they leave, or they're against it, or they make their own lives, and they go against that, they stand up for what they believe, and they choose a more difficult life. I have a friend who did that, and it's not between a Malay and anybody else. It's between the Chinese and the Indian, because there's also there's a lot of racism, to call it what it is, and as well there's a lot of othering and intolerance of difference and class, like consciousness, I guess, divides. And I have a friend who came from a very, very wealthy family, and she fell in love with a kind of rock star musician Indian guy that she just loves, and she just gave it all up, and she moved to Australia, and
To
she
be
was
with
like, I'm
him.
going to do this. Yeah,
Yeah.
she said, I don't care if you're okay with it or not. I love this man, and that's what it's gonna
So that's really interesting. The overall culture is a particular thing that has subculture within it. And then within those subcultures, there's also very strict ideology and decision making that is not autonomous.
Yes. Yeah. 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 There, where I come from, the whole idea of community and the next person, the person in front of you and around you, is a big deal. That is a good thing and a not so good thing. It can create really a really good life, because humans, I feel, are very community based, animals, and it takes a village, and we seek family and community, and that's very strong where I come from. But there's also a lot of intolerance and rules in community, that communities are often afraid of difference, afraid of nonconformity.
Were you raised as a Chinese person? Were you raised Buddhist, or what was your faith growing up?
I was Protestant. My parents were very religious.
Oh, wow. Okay. That throws me for a loop. Okay.
Yeah,
What?
but within my family, like the extended family, because extended family is a big thing. Like, they have say in it. We used to spend our weekends on Saturdays. It would be at my grandparents' house on my mother's side, and on Sundays, Sunday dinner at the grandparents' house on my father's side, because that's the prime day. It's like Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. I think that movie was about the girls going home to have dinner with their father, right, every Sunday or something. And it really is a thing. And so the extended family was Buddhist, but also culturally Buddhist, and by Buddhist by some sort of traditional practice. It's not really, and it's not the Buddhism that you see in yoga studios here. It's very much based on ancestral worship, the idea of prosperity. I never heard a lot of Buddhist philosophy come out of those things. We had altars at home, and food that was offered to the ancestors on the altars, and that kind of Buddhism. And my parents became very, very stout Protestants I think because they got into the church because of Sunday school, because Sunday school is essentially, now that I've grown up and realized it, free childcare over the weekends. Right?
Makes sense.
Yeah, and so they got into it and they found a lot of meaning in it, and that was how I was brought up. It was not my favorite experience.
Well, I was just going to ask you about that. So, how does one, growing up in a place where identity sounds pretty important all around, how does one
Yes.
develop one's sense of self?
Oh, interesting. You don't. It's not. I know it sounds a little crazy, but that's not the first thing on the menu, you know, because it's all about community and duty and being a good something to somebody. That's, I hope I'm not, as I'm saying this, I hope I'm not making a caricature, you know, in my, for in my head, in my own head, but that's somehow I feel that the sense of self is not the first thing on the agenda. It's about being a good person, a good daughter, a good son, a good wife or a good husband, and then a good parent, a good worker, a good homemaker. That's the identity is based on roles. I learned very late in life to develop a sense of self. But everybody has it naturally, obviously, and you live with that existential loneliness of kind of wandering the desert of that, and then like coming upon things that define you. It's like as if you're blind and you're in a room and you're trying to figure out what the environment is by kind of like feeling around in the dark. And that's what it felt like, trying to find myself, a sense of self anyway.
When do you think your first aha moment was then of discovering who you are?
Wow, it was so late. I think it was super recent. It was maybe, it was after my divorce. That was about maybe 7 years ago now. And that was a huge thing. It was a huge moment in my life that kind of, it was like how do you say? In French, we say déchirance, like a tearing of something. And I guess it's a cleaving, right? A cleaving from a certain ideas and that was a moment where I was alone in France, and I was in a country that is very much about the self, right? And I was cleaving from the role of wife and the idea of being a woman that I had before, and then that was when I began to have and I had no family near me. I was struggling with my job because I had a business and I closed it at the same time. It was all going down at the same time. And so you're sitting there and you're like, it's like tabula rasa, like you don't have all the anchors that kind of, all the landmarks that you would use to navigate this life that you thought, you wanted to live. And so I had to sit there and go, wow, what is this? And who am I? And what does it mean to be me?
That must have been scary, but exciting at the same time.
Oh, yeah, it was terrifying. It was the first time I felt fear, actually, like really visceral fear in my life. And it was also a time of like financial difficulty and, on a very important level. And I was like, wow, when you don't know how you're going to pay rent, and I never had that problem, and you don't know if someone's going to rent you an apartment. You don't know, and you're really in a culture that's very different than yours. And that was and at the same time, like, you don't know if you've made the biggest mistake of your life. You don't know if you can trust yourself. That was the first time I felt fear in my life. I'm actually usually too stupid to be afraid.
You are not stupid.
You can you can either be really brave or really dumb. And sometimes I feel like I've done things that appear brave, but it's really because I didn't understand the danger I was going into.
That is
But
brave, isn't
yeah.
it? To jump into something, again, this is what has been said over and over again for millennia, is that bravery is not the absence of fear. Bravery is being afraid and doing it anyway.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. But I feel like I did a lot of things in the absence of fear.
Did you get married at a young age?
No, I got married at, I think, 30, 31. I think, if I remember correctly. Those years seem like such a blur to me. They're
Yeah.
so clear and so unclear at the same time. It's as if it's been put in a shelf in my mind that is, it's there, but it's like hard to get to,
Do you have siblings?
I do. I have a sister. She's in Hong Kong. She's 3 years older than me.
Are expectations for youngest daughter different than eldest daughter in your culture?
Yes, yes. I actually grew up with no expectations on me because everything was put on my sister. To her detriment, really, it's really unfair, and I wish I could have taken that away from her. But it is also something very odd to have people expect nothing of you. That also shaped a big part of who I am. Yeah. And I gotta say, like, I don't think it's said enough how expectations can really hurt somebody, but the lack of it can also do that. You learn expectations to a certain point is a vote of confidence. Is to say, I look at you and I believe that you can do this. To a healthy point, parental expectations can be a way for the parent to want to self-actualize through somebody else, through their children. It could be an image thing that's very much present in Asian culture, and it also can be a way of like living vicariously through their kids, all the things that they couldn't do. That is kind of unfair and difficult, but a good amount of expectation to say, I see who you are, and yeah, and I think that you can get here because I have a little bit more, I can see you from the outside. That can be good.
Yeah, I think that might, in fact, be a universal parental thing, that vicaria, perhaps.
Mm.
I think we see that a lot here as well.
Yeah. We can't help it. I think people can't help it.
Yeah. Do you have children?
No.
No. Okay. I didn't think so,
No.
but I couldn't quite remember.
Yeah. Yeah.
What brought you to France? Was that the marriage, or was that
Yeah.
a leap of faith, or both?
It was the marriage. It was. I was living in New York right before we got married, and then I was going to stay in New York actually, and then we decided to get married, and I moved to France.
Is it hard to be a global citizen given the state and nature of the world at large these days, with all the restrictions and the concerns and the xenophobia? I'm just going to throw that word out there.
Yeah. Yes. Yes and no. You get used to it. With age, it gets a little heavier because you have a hankering for home. And with time, over time, I feel like life is a journey home, and that idea becomes stronger and stronger inside of you as time goes by, inside of me at least. And home is not a place, but we can confuse it for a place, because we're looking for it in many different places, in many different ways, right? So a sense of belonging, a sense of not feeling like we're a foreigner, that that can that can be difficult sometimes. In France, it is difficult for me in Paris because I have an accent when I speak that is very, obvious. So, and also France is still a little bit behind in the you look, because of your skin color, and then you have an accent, and immediately you're a foreigner, and they can't not point it out to you. And I think it's very kind of normal, it's natural. I think human beings are naturally that way, but it can get tiring because you do want to just blend in and fit in and belong. And after so many years, I lived in New York for 2.5 years, and I'd never felt that. Nobody ever, nobody ever made me feel like I was a foreigner, and I loved that. I loved it. Like, it didn't matter what accent I had or how I grew up or what I looked like. I love that about America. Actually, I think there's a big melting pot here, and there are, for most days as a foreigner, I didn't feel that and that difference. I did, like, in certain instances, in a very pronounced way, but it was exceptional, like it was
exception to the rule.
exceptional. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, not in the exceptional, like exceptional, an exception to the rule. Yeah.
Same thing. No, I mean, you're right both ways. That's really interesting. I think it is frustrating that humans don't tend to see human first. They find whatever difference and or similarity they can connect to.
Yes.
And what's ironic about that, of course, is the one thing we all have in common is that we're human. But that's not what we do, right? Our ego or whatever it is that's leading us by the nose decides to pick out the other stuff first.
I have a feeling that that's about safety, It's that we feel safer more in the immediate. We feel safer with people who look like us, who resemble us. We feel like that's the safest, It depends how we've grown up as well. It depends what people have told us. I feel like a lot of I was just telling Jake the other day, I have a friend who's a kindergarten teacher, and she's a Canadian Chinese, and she teaches in France, and it was Chinese New Year, the Lunar New Year, and she wrote in Chinese on the board, in Mandarin on the board, and she taught them how to say Happy Chinese New Year in Mandarin. And they were so excited, the kids. I think they were like, what, 4 or something, and they were like, how do you know how to do this? And she said, well, I'm Chinese. And they were like, what do you mean? Like, how are you Chinese? And because they didn't look at her face. They didn't look at her skin color, her features. It didn't make, and I was like, isn't that incredible?
We have to be taught these differences. I love those videos of the little best friend kids, and they'll be side by side, one black child, one white child. They're sitting, and the interviewer says, how are you different? And the first thing they say is, oh, he likes bananas and I don't like bananas. Or it'll be a kid in a wheelchair and a kid that is not in a wheelchair. And they'll say, how are you the same? How are you different? And it's never about the thing that you would think it would be about, because to your point, they don't see things in that context.
Yeah. And we forget that we learned this.
We do.
And to what a shame that we learned this. What a shame that it was put into us.
It does break my heart.
Right? And such a waste of time, because there's so much time in life to actually to experience its beauty and to experience connection. And we take time away from that connection when we are taught these things. We have so many missed opportunities, and that's such a tragedy somehow.
It is a tragedy, and it's to ourselves as well. The things that we compare and contrast, and I know I do it, where I think, oh, why am I not good at this? Or why can't I do whatever it is, we do it to ourselves too. And that
Oh,
creates a
yeah.
separation. And I would go back again to childhood where somebody has to teach you to have fear and self-loathing and doubts, as you said, limitations.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Because kids are
We
fearless
have
in
to learn.
general. Yeah.
Yeah. We're all like intrepid and fearless, and we don't know better than we just go into it. Like I think about starting a business, and when I started my business, I did a lot of things that a lot of people wouldn't have done, because they were taught not to, and I did it because I didn't know that we couldn't, and we shouldn't, or something. And some of those things worked out really well, and some of those things didn't work out. But I wouldn't have done the things that worked well if I listened to people who told me, well, you don't do that. And isn't that, I mean, it's good to not know everything,
Yeah.
right? Like, we strive to know everything because we feel safer. I am very much like that. I really, I try not to be, that's one of the things that I'm working on. Like, it's this false sense of control, right? Like, we try to control the situation so that we can try to control an outcome, so that we can be safe and we can prevent pain. And yeah, I'm learning more and more that pain can be a guide and a gift, and it is the point. It can be that point beyond our imagination that takes us to the place that we didn't know we could go.
Yeah. It's scary, though.
Oh, absolutely.
It is tricky to override those things. And again, fear takes forms all sorts of ways, right? Hate, doubt, self-abuse, obsession,
Yeah.
overwork, overrunning, over exercising, overeating, undereating. I mean, there's just so many things that it can look like.
Yeah. Self-abnegation. Is that a word? Is that my vocabulary is a little mixed up from the
You
new
speak. How many languages do you speak?
4.
Yeah, I think you're doing fine.
It becomes like one of those alphabet soups sometimes, and it's like some words that work really well in certain language, and then it doesn't. Like, when it becomes, I'm speaking like a little bit of Franglish now. I didn't realize that it would happen to me until I met Jake. And this is the most English I've spoken for a couple of years. And I was like, wow, my English has gotten really weird. But yeah, we deny ourselves things, is what I want to say. Like, because of fear.
Sure. Yeah. I'm curious. I love asking this question of people that speak many languages. What language do you dream in? And does it change around, or is it constantly the same language?
I think I dream in English. Yeah. I have a very strong relationship with English. Because because reading kind of saved me when I was a kid. And so it was my first, it's that first experience of reading a book and feeling like you would never be alone in the world because you have a book. Or you've read something that you've always felt, but you couldn't put your words to, and suddenly the whole world felt safer.
Yeah.
So that I had that feeling very much when I was a child from reading English books, and then I was writing a bit, and I have a very kind of relationship with writing too. So I think that's why, because the language is so important to me. So it's always English.
Yeah, it's interesting. The universal language of dreams. It is a curious thing. What do you do for a living?
Well, I'm about to start a new job next week. So I've been, in the past 5 years, I've been basically like a brand manager for a company, a leather goods company. I've done a bunch of different things, but right now, so I'm about to go work for a woman who has who has a grocer, like a grocery store, like in Paris, and she's had it for 20 years, and now she wants to develop it. And so we're going to, so I'm her, what she calls her Swiss Army knife, like her right hand person. So we're going to develop the business together. I'm going to assist her in that, and we're coming up with a line of food, like pantry food, like dry goods, that is sourced in the purest places in the world. And so it's beyond organic. It's also where it's grown and how it's grown and by who, by whom it's grown. And yeah, by whom it's grown. And we're doing a little tea bar and a coffee shop, and like, in Saint-Germain-des-Prés in Paris. And that's going to be really exciting. It's a totally new thing for me, but I'm a big foodie. I love food. I love feeding people.
You're a good cook.
I love thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I try. I love it. I just love, I love shopping for food. I love markets. I love, it's a big part of my culture. Malaysian culture is about food. It's about love is shown through feeding people. And, the question is, have you eaten, all the time, all throughout the day? And we talk about dinner during lunch, and, and lunch during breakfast. And it's such a huge part of my culture. And the older I get, the more I'm becoming that, that like in my culture, like the auntie who feeds people. Who packs stuff for you in Tupperwares. That woman. I'm becoming that woman. Oh my God,
that's great.
But yeah, so I love that. I love this new job where I can just fully obsess. And I've been reading like Ruth and Nigel Slater like all through summer. And
as a person who for lunch had a scoop of almond butter, a bunch of Persian cucumbers and rice wine, and a bite of I had like 7 snap peas. So I need somebody like this in my life.
Oh, I wish if I lived here, you would be fed all the time.
Yes.
You have a Jake diet. He has the same, like the scoop of peanut butter or almond butter,
Yeah.
Same. And then like whatever vegetable.
I'd tease Jake horrendously when the first time I went to his apartment. I opened I'm sure he told you this. I opened the refrigerator. And I was like, Jake, I'm bad, but this is horrendous. It was just a like hot sauce, a ketchup, and some of those takeout packets of soy sauce. I'm like, what?
I know. I saw
like
that.
One thing of grapes. I'm like, what are you eating, dude?
Yeah. I know. I was like, what is this? And his fridge is so big. I have like a tiny fridge. I'm like, we need to swap fridges. We need to swap kitchens.
My fridge is tiny too. Do you have a sense of spirituality as a person who grew up surrounded by so many different cultures and religions?
Yes, I have a very, I think, an unshakable awareness of the God-shaped void. I'm not religious. I have a very fraught relationship with religion because of how it went down in my family. I take issue with the lack of tolerance and inclusion and fear mongering, and I know that not everybody in that religion is that way. And I think I've seen how my father has found peace and purpose and meaning in his religion that I don't like very much, but I accept it for that, and I appreciate it for that. But for myself, yeah, I feel that. I feel the void. I feel a sense of the divine that is, that is in, I don't know, in people and in nature and in the moments that you can have between humans and animals, between humans and the environment. I guess that's my spirituality. Though we were just joking that if Rick Rubin started a cult, I would join it.
Yeah, he's a deep philosopher for sure.
Yeah.
I've watched a lot of his videos where he's pontificating about the nature of the universe. This is an interesting person.
Yes, wonderful. Yeah, really interesting. And I feel like he's really calibrated, in the best way, his listening and his observation and his speaking. It's he almost just he listens and hears and understands, yeah, with that the kind of attention that we should always strive to have, I think, and speaks also with that. And there's something really magical, like really precious about that.
I
You
agree.
know.
Yeah, it's the true art of listening, I think, is a duality that is both everything matters, nothing matters, and I'm not important in this moment, but I am you as well.
Yeah,
Which is like a
yeah,
weird combo, right?
yeah,
If you're speaking, I'm not important, but I also have the ability to see myself in you. Therefore, there's this communion happening, but also a sense of I don't matter in you're the
yeah,
one
yeah.
voicing that part of me right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm explaining it
It
very well.
totally, it makes sense, and I can see it in your podcast. I can see that you do that in your podcast. And I think there is also, I see you also being that person, seeing, because that's also a good listener, to listen and try to understand from the perspective and the context of that person. And then that's when it takes you outside of yourself, and that's real curiosity too. Say,
Yeah.
wow,
Thank you.
to
I'll
not to
take that
see what you're
compliment too.
seeing.
You're so nice to me. We didn't
Cool.
mention the name of the store, the grocery store.
It's called Hedoni. Hedoni, like He with an accent, Donie. But I guess it has a tie to like hedonist.
That's where my brain went, but
Yeah, that's where my brain goes. I hope it's not wrong. But because I've never asked her actually, or the owner, why, but that's what I imagined. It's about pleasure, maybe. The French have a wonderful, one of the things I love about living in France is this whole idea of the savoir vivre, the knowing how to live, and the art of living. And part of the art of living is to make space and time for pleasure, and to make time, and to allow time, for to do things with time. And that's really liberating, and really nice, and kind of, it nourishes you. But I come from a culture where that is just like not done, so I if I've been on holiday. This is 3.5 weeks, right? And I had to go out and do something for work today, because my brain was going a little bit, like I was getting like baby brain, like it was just kind of getting a bit soggy in my head. And also I start feeling a little anxiety. It's, no, not very good at being hedonistic. But
well, I'm glad you had that break. It's nice to have a break like that before you go into a new job or a new career. It's good
oh yeah,
to
like a reset. Yeah.
yeah, it's a definite reset. And Jake
Yeah.
is such a lovely human. What a great person to do that around.
Yes, he's a wonderful person to do that around. And yeah, and he knows how to, he works really hard, and
We're really
he
hard.
has a fantastic work ethic. But he's also so much fun, and I'm not saying this in a self-deprecating way, but I'm not good at having fun. Like, I'm not like a let loose person. Like, I don't know, I'm very uncool. Like, like I'm not like, I don't dance, and I don't know how to be like over the top with things, and kind of like let go and like be excessive. I'm very like kind of model child type, it's just from my childhood. And Jake is so much fun, and I love that about him. It reminds you that you can have fun, and you can break some rules, and you can, you know do this or do that, or that's
Yeah.
nice.
That's a good balance. I know we're running out of time, but I would love for you to tell the story of how you two met, just because it's so rom-com to me.
Isn't it? That was okay, so I met him the first time in Paris. I was working in the shop that I was working in, my shop. And I was not supposed to be there on that day, actually, because that was not my day. On a Saturday, I had, and so I was in there because my colleague was off on trip. And in walks Jake and Jeff, who he was working with, then. And Jeff was insisting that he should buy a phone cover for his phone because he has no protection on his phone, and it's a leather goods shop, and so he was like, you get a leather one because it's better, and so he's like, okay, and he asked me if I have one, and I had one, and he tried it on, and it was fine, and he was like, you know what, I'm not going to use this, I'll never use this, and I said, well, if you're not going to use it, then you shouldn't buy it. And so we talk a little bit, because yeah, just like that, and then they leave.
Did you have a spark that initially, did you think, wow, this
You know what?
guy is cute?
I thought he was really cool, but I know, because I was working, and I work in that leather goods store. It's a very male centered store, so there's a lot of men who come through that store. And when you're a woman who works in a shop like that, and in France, where the culture is different, it's very, you kind of have your
Guard.
your guard up, and I always had that, because I want to be, I want credibility, I want to be taken seriously, and to have the boundaries. So no, not really. But I just thought, he's like a cool guy, really nice. And 2.5 weeks later, or 3 weeks later, I went to London to see Trevor Noah. This he had a stand-up like event there, like a show, and then I went to a store because I was with a friend, and she wanted to buy a hunting jacket, and I went to this store on Notting Hill. On Notting Hill, it's on Portobello Road, actually. And
yeah, I know it well.
Really lovely store, and it's called 284 or 282. Wonderful store. And my friends like trying on all these coats, and in walks Jake and Jeff, and I was like, wait a minute. And Jake's, his hair was down to his, like, just to his shoulder, like the top of his shoulder, or his chin or something.
White blonde hair.
Yeah, white blonde hair. And so I was in the back of the store, and he walks in, and so where the light is, and so he's walking in, and he's got, like, there's this guy with that halo of hair, and behind him is Jeff, who's dressed in, he has a very particular style, right? And so I look at them, and I was like, wow, okay. And I say to, I think I say in generally to the both of them, I was like, I saw you guys in Paris 3 weeks ago, or 2.5 weeks ago, and they look at me and they go, you're the phone case girl. and so we were in the store for a long time because my friend was trying on clothes, and I was just pottering around, and so I thought Jake and I would talk, and we're like, oh, and he said, do you want to have lunch, or and Jeff was like, you should have lunch with Jake, because I have a meeting and he's alone, and so Jake had lunch with me and my friend. And after the lunch, my friend said to me, and she said, if that guy asks you out, or like if that guy shows interest in you and you don't respond, I will be really mad at you. Because I was on my 1-year dating ban.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm on a dating ban. I was like, no, I'm on my 1-year dating ban. And I was like, he's not going to get in touch. He lives in Los Angeles. And he got in touch, and we were just chatting, and that's how it started.
Yeah. Well, from this end, when he came back, he was very excited about having met you, and it was really cute to see.
Yeah. Well, he's a really sweet person.
But the chances of that interaction happening twice is so astronomical.
I know, isn't it? I mean, I was like, don't read too much into it. I was very careful, and I'm like, I know it's really tempting. It's very kind of like Nancy Meyers thing, and but I'm like, don't read into it. Like, just be careful. Don't give it too much importance. And
Meanwhile, the ancestors are like, listen, bitch.
yeah, like, listen, like, what do we have to do around here? I'm like, no, it's fine. Like, do we have to like strike you with lightning? But it's and there are moments where I regret not, that. Do you see how I'm not fun? It's like, this is it. This is how I'm not fun.
You're fun. I've been around you. You are fun.
But it's nice to believe in a bit of magic, and to feel that.
How did you allow yourself to have that when you weren't necessarily that kind of person? What made you even to come here and hang out for 3 weeks? And I mean, I know he went there and hung out for a little while, but still, it takes a lot of
Yeah.
courage.
Yeah, I think it's the same situation where I didn't really weigh it. It's that I know now how rare it is to meet a really good person that, like, you can, like, obviously I'm attracted to Jake, and obviously he's a very attractive person, but beyond that, I think he's a really good person. And I'm beginning, to realize that in life you don't meet that many people that you can say that's a good person. You can say, I'm really attracted to this person, and I'm in, like, I'm infatuated with this person or something, and that can happen a lot. But a good person that you meet and you connect with, that's really rare. And I think it's worth exploring. And that's what it was,
He's got that good combination of gentleness, but feel like if the shit went down, he would be the first to jump in and kick everyone's ass. I don't know why he has that vibe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he totally does. And that's kind of hot.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. But yeah, he totally has that. He's got that. Yeah, he's so sweet. And but at the same time, he has something like really badass behind it, that he's not, afraid to pull out, if needed. And and he's got like the really wholesome guy thing, but at the same time kind of like the bad boy thing as well, and that was very unexpected. And I was like, wow, that's kind of cool.
Well, it's all very exciting. And I think it's a good lesson, hearing your story, especially I think from the woman's point of view, because that is a risk, because you risk safety. Besides emotional safety, you risk physical safety to jump into something. And
absolutely.
So it is a reminder that there are good connections to be made.
Yes, there it is. And you risk, anything to do with love is a risk, I think, or like all the peripheral parts of it. And and I think I was willing to take that risk because I value that, but trust me, it's not something that it doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel easy at all, to do things like that. Like, but you gotta, I feel like you gotta do it. Like,
you do it anyway. That's bravery.
Yeah.
Right there.
It's one of those things you're gonna regret in life if you don't do it, and those are the major things you regret, and I really believe that we do regret the things we don't do more than the things that we do. And when this happens, like you meet somebody twice in 2 different countries in the span of 3 weeks, and you can't not, do something. But it's also that Jake was he was very charming as well. Like, he's a great communicator. He's really funny, and that helps. It makes you forget all the danger. But we had a moment where like, I think his mother was concerned that I could, that he could go to Paris and I could be a murderer too.
That's true,
right? Like,
he
could be in danger too. So yeah, we don't think about that, but that could happen. Yeah.
The
Well,
jury is
it
still
didn't.
out. Either one of you could be a serial killer. We're just gonna wait and
I
see.
know, right? Maybe
What a
we're one of
plot
those slow
twist
ones.
if you're both a serial killer. That's the plot twist.
Yes, exactly. And we'll
What a
see.
way to
We'll see
go.
who'll survive. Right? That would be a great Romeo and Juliet story without the families.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Tell people how they might find you on adventures or, are you on social media? I can't remember.
I am, but it's just because I had a store before, the home decoration store, and I had my Instagram for that store, but I'm not on social media in general. I don't post anything because, I don't post anything about my life.
You leave tomorrow to go back. What are you going to do to celebrate your last day?
Oh, what are we doing? We're going to Musso and Frank's tonight.
Yummy.
And we're celebrating Jake's movie release.
Yay.
And because Terra Firma comes out today. It came out today on streaming. So we're going to do that. And yeah, so that'll be a dinner tonight. We went to Cantor's the other day. Oh my
Oh, I love
goodness.
Canners. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. It was so good. That was the best pastrami sandwich I've ever
Yes.
had.
That's
And
my
we were
favorite
seated
there.
yeah, isn't it the best? And we were seated in a booth that next to a framed copy of Ruth Reichel's review, and I felt like I was going to temple, and that was like the altar I was praying at.
I love it.
Fantastic. It was great. It's been a wonderful trip, and LA
I'm
is
glad.
something.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
glad. I'm glad you've had a good experience. I would have no doubt that Jake would show you an amazing 3 weeks. So I'm glad you've had that.
It's been really amazing.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of the city. Like, yeah, he's been driving a lot. Like, I've been, like the city is so big.
That's how you know somebody from LA really likes you, is that they're willing to drive you to all those places because
Yeah, that means a lot. I know that I see that. I was like, wow, that really means a lot. And I love LA. LA is a real melting pot. And I always think that you can tell if it's a real melting pot by the authenticity of the different types of food in different communities. I had Thai food here that was better than in Thailand. And it was so good. It was super authentic. And I'm like, I love that community was able to preserve and share that. And I think that says something about the city.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
yeah.
Well, come back soon, and then I need to come to France because I've been to
Yes.
Charles de Gaulle Airport. I've never actually gone to experience France at all.
You must come. You'll stay with me.
Okay.
But in my tiny little place. But you must come. The tiny place is part of the experience.
You blew my mind when you told me about the squatting thing. Can we talk about that really quick? I'm just so flabbergasted by this.
Oh yeah, if somebody breaks into your apartment and lives there for more than I think 48 or 72 hours and that apartment and you can't kick them out. That's a thing. But it's not that common and it's not that common in Paris, but I actually saw a documentary on it and that was mind-blowing. That was like in France, right? Like in actual houses where many people moved in and cut electricity and put generators in. And no, that's the tenant is very well protected in France, as workers are very well protected as opposed to employers. So yeah. And if somebody that stops paying rent, I think in winter you can't kick them out or something. There are laws like that. It's wild. Yeah.
That is wild. Huh.
Yeah.
Well, anyway,
It is also,
thank you so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate it, especially knowing this is your last day for you to take the time. I think that's great.
Well, thank you for having me. It's such an honor and a great pleasure. It's been such a cool conversation. I love talking about these things with you.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love your questions and yeah. I wish we could hang.
I know.
Yeah.
I'll come to France or you come back and we'll meet up somewhere else. Yeah.
You're such a wonderful person to talk to.
Thanks.
I love that. I love your humanity.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
We need more of that in life. That's what makes it special.
Well, right back at you. I think that you, like myself, are a human of the world. And the more we're out there, the more likely there's more of us, and it kind of spreads like wildfire as we remind people that it's not as difficult as it seems.
Yeah, it isn't, because we have each other, and we always find we find each other. Yeah, we really do. I think everybody does. They find their people.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's going home, Yes,
absolutely. It's like Gilda, the good witch, says to Dorothy, you had it all along. You had the ability to be home all along, because it was never outside of herself. Right? It's always in us. Yeah. Thank you for listening, everybody. Bye. Bye, love.
Bye. Bye.
See ya. Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human Podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks. Bye.